Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are standing in the heavy air of an ancient, forgotten land, where the only music is the hum of insects and the splash of water against mossy stones. You're trying your best to blend into the prehistoric scenery. Good luck with that. There's a warm, sticky breeze, and in front of you, a colossus lumbers from the mist. The ground trembles beneath its massive feet, and even though you're trying to stay cool, you can feel your heart hammering like you've just run a marathon you didn't sign up for. The creature's neck rises like a living pillar, its small head swinging side to side as if searching for something, or maybe checking if it should bother squashing you. And then it spots them. A patch of red flowers, delicate petals catching the last glimmers of the sun. The dinosaur, this massive, long-necked marvel of muscle and bone, snorts eyes wide with what looks suspiciously like fury. With a noise that sounds like a cross between a sneeze and a trumpet, it lunges forward and thrashes at the flowers, with its snout stomping the earth so hard you nearly fall flat on your face. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You shuffle backwards, watching in awe as this ancient beast, a sauropod, by modern classification, though no one back then would have bothered with labels, continues its flower massacre. The plant stems snap and crackle, and the air fills with the scent of crushed petals. There's something almost comical about it, like watching an elephant panic at the sight of a mouse. You're no botanist, but it seems pretty extreme for a dinosaur to go full berserker on flowers that can't possibly pose a threat. Historians still debate whether this dinosaur's hatred of red was a biological quirk. Maybe its eyes filtered certain wavelengths differently, or a learned behavior passed down in some bizarre prehistoric game of don't touch the red stuff. Either way, you're standing in the middle of the argument, and it's not very comforting. Your ears ring with the echo of its bellows. You notice the smaller creatures of the forest, little bird-like dinosaurs and early mammals have scattered, sensing danger, or maybe just not wanting to deal with the drama. The long neck's tail swishes hard enough to topple a small tree, sending leaves flying like ancient confetti. The strangest part, you can't help noticing how the other plants' greens, yellows, blues are left untouched. The dinosaur moves past a stand of purple-tipped ferns without a second glance, but the instant it sees another splash of red, a cluster of berries. This time it charges again, eyes wide and nostrils flared. It's like watching a living bulldozer with a vendetta. And here's a fun fact to chew on while you're trying not to get trampled. The oldest known pigment ever used by human hands is red ochre. Yep. Our ancestors were smearing red on cave walls tens of thousands of years before they thought of doodling anything else. Maybe they got the idea watching this dinosaur lose its mind at the color. You crouch behind a rock, feeling the vibrations of its tantrum through your bones. The creature eventually stops, standing over the ruined patch like a victorious general surveying a battlefield. It snorts again as if to say, "Don't come back," though who it's addressing is anyone's guess, your own guess. This giant's no fan of scarlet fashion trends. Good thing you left your red hoodie at home. Finally, with a shudder that makes its enormous frame ripple like a flag in the wind, the long neck turns and lumbers away, its head swinging low now, almost as if embarrassed by its outburst. You stay frozen for a long moment, listening to the slow thud of its footsteps fading into the trees. Oddly enough, as you get your breath back, you remember reading somewhere that flamingos get their pink color from the shrimp they eat. Imagine if this dinosaur had eaten something that turned it red, it'd probably spend the rest of its life running from its own reflection. Night starts to fall, and with the dinosaur gone, the forest seems to breathe again. Insects chirp, small critters scurry, and you finally dare to move. The crushed red flowers at your feet look harmless enough now, just splashes of color on the dark earth. You take one last glance at the trail of destruction and start to follow because, let's face it, this story is just getting started. The next morning, You wake to the sound of leaves rustling in the breeze and the distant, rhythmic thump of colossal feet. Your neck aches from sleeping against a boulder, but you push yourself upright, brush off the prehistoric dirt, and squint through the trees. There it is, the long-necked dinosaur, again, lumbering toward a patch of berry bushes that dot the edge of a shallow creek. The berries gleam like tiny rubies under the rising sun. You'd think after last night's floral apocalypse this poor creature might have calmed down. But no. The moment its gaze settles on those crimson jewels, it stops dead as if struck by lightning. Its nostrils flare, its eyes go wide, and you swear you hear the dinosaur huff like an angry bull. And just like that, the tantrum begins. The ground trembles as it stomps forward, tail swinging like a wrecking ball. The berry-laden bushes don't stand a chance, branches snap, leaves scatter, and berries burst underfoot, spattering the grass with juice. The dinosaur's feet churn up the soil, leaving behind a patch of destruction that looks like a giant had a very bad gardening day. Historians still debate whether this kind of behavior served any evolutionary purpose. Was it a defense mechanism, some bizarre feeding strategy, or simply a prehistoric version of "get off my lawn"? We may never know for sure. But watching it in real time, it's part hilarious, part terrifying, and entirely messy. You duck behind a fallen log, heart pounding, watching the chaos unfold. Every creature within earshot bolts, early mammals dive into burrows. Small feathered dinosaurs flap into the air, and even the water ripples as fish dart away from the commotion. Now, here's an odd fact to sprinkle into your prehistoric panic: red berries, in many ancient human cultures, were seen as both a sign of danger and a symbol of life. Some were deadly, others were used in rituals. So maybe this dinosaur was just ahead of its time, trying to warn us off the red stuff. The creature rears up slightly on its hind legs, crashing down with a force that sends a shockwave through the ground. You lose your balance and end up flat on your back, staring up at the leafy canopy as it rains down bits of shattered branch and berry pulp. And just when you think it's over, the dinosaur lets out a long, low groan that rattles your teeth. It stomps in a circle, snorting at the remaining red berries as if making absolutely sure they're good and squashed. You can't help but mutter, "Okay, buddy, I think they get the point." The dinosaur doesn't respond because of course it doesn't, but its head swings in your general direction. You freeze, certain for a heartbeat that it's about to charge. Instead, it huffs again, then turns its massive tail, carving a trench in the earth as it shuffles off. You stay very still until it's disappeared into the forest, leaving behind a trail of destruction that looks like a small meteor shower hit. By now, the sun is fully up, casting a golden glow over the battered landscape. The red-juiced grass glistens in the light, and you take a moment to wonder how such a peaceful morning turned into a berry bloodbath. The air smells faintly sweet, like jam left too long in the sun. It's at this point that you spot something interesting along the creek, where the berries once grew. Small tracks lead away from the chaos. Tiny prints of creatures that took advantage of the destruction to snatch up fallen fruit before the giant could notice. A prehistoric cleanup crew, if you will. And as you start walking, following the dinosaur's path, you remind yourself at least you're not wearing red. Imagine showing up to this party in a scarlet tunic. You'd be a walking target. One last weird note before we move along. Did you know that some modern birds see red as a sign of aggression? In cockfights, for example, red feathers can make a rival furious. Maybe, just maybe, our long-necked friend shares that ancient quirk of the animal kingdom. The forest ahead grows thicker, shadows stretching long as the sun rises higher. You hear the distant call of strange birds and the murmur of the wind through ancient trees. Somewhere beyond, the dinosaur moves on its tantrum, over for now. You press on, following the trail of trampled undergrowth and deep, saucer-shaped footprints. The forest shifts as you move. What was dense and green gives way to a more open stretch of land, where the trees stand farther apart, as if they're cautiously leaving space for whatever drama is about to unfold. And tonight, oh, you get a front row seat to one of the strangest shows the ancient world has to offer. The day drags on, heat rippling across the plain until the sun begins its slow descent behind distant hills. At first, the sky glows orange, bathing everything in a warm light. But then, almost imperceptibly, that orange deepens to crimson. The clouds catch the color like spilled ink, and soon the whole western horizon is aflame with scarlet. And that's when the long neck appears again, silhouetted against the blood-red sky. You stop in your tracks. The dinosaur halts too, head swinging up to stare at the heavens as if it's only just realized the sun has betrayed it. There's a long, tense pause where even the wind seems to hold its breath. Then, all at once, the beast lets out a guttural roar that echoes for miles. Its enormous frame shudders as it wheels around, eyes wide with panic. You can almost hear its frantic inner monologue. The sky is on fire. The sky is on fire. It crashes into the forest edge, snapping saplings like toothpicks, tail whipping back and forth so wildly you have to dive behind a boulder to avoid getting flattened. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had the capacity for emotional responses to natural phenomena, or if we're just projecting human feelings onto these prehistoric titans. But as you watch this sauropod freak out over a sunset, it's hard not to feel like you're witnessing a very ancient, very relatable moment of existential dread. And here's a fun, oddball fact for your consideration while you try not to get stepped on sunsets on Mars or Blue. Seriously, so if this dinosaur had evolved on Mars, maybe red wouldn't have been such a problem. The dinosaur's panic grows. It stomps in circles, flattening ferns and bushes, its giant head swinging low as if to hide from the angry sky. The ground beneath your feet vibrates with every step, and a startled flock of pterosaur-like creatures takes to the air, their silhouettes sharp against the fiery clouds. You press yourself flatter against your rock heart, hammering. The dinosaur lets out another bellow, then barrels toward the deeper woods. Branches crack, leaves rain down, and the forest seems to swallow the massive creature whole. As the last of its form disappears into the trees, you let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. The forest settles. The wind returns cool against your sweat-streaked skin. The red in the sky fades gradually to a dusky purple, the danger real or imagined passing with the night. You stand brushing dirt from your clothes and glance at the path of destruction left in the creature's wake. It's hard to believe one sunset could cause so much chaos. But maybe you'd freak out too if the sky suddenly turned your least favorite color. And speaking of colors and catastrophes, did you know that some ancient cultures saw red skies as omens of war or disaster? The old sailors' rhyme, red sky at night, sailors' delight. Red sky at morning, sailors' warning probably came much later. But you get the point. Red has always carried weight even in the days before there were sailors to quote it. You watch the last glimmers of sunlight fade, the world slipping into the soft gray of twilight. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint rhythmic crash of the dinosaur's retreat fading deeper into the forest, leaving behind broken trees and bewildered silence. You sigh, glance up at the sky now innocent and dark, and start after it. After all, this journey is far from over, and knowing this dinosaur, there's bound to be more drama before the night is through. The night passes with the sounds of the forest all around you. Low hums, distant shrieks, the occasional crash of something big moving far off in the dark. When dawn finally breaks, you rise stiffly from your makeshift bed of moss and fallen leaves. The air is cool, damp, and filled with the scent of wet earth. You don't get far before something unusual catches your eye, the entrance to a shallow cave, its walls smeared with what looks suspiciously like ancient artwork. You step inside, curiosity outweighing your better judgment. The light from the rising sun spills across the stone, illuminating faded images. There are handprints, hundreds of them, stamped in red ochre, the pigment still clinging stubbornly to the rock after untold millennia. And among them, crude outlines of massive, long-necked beasts with tiny heads and colossal bodies. But what really grabs your attention is how these painted dinosaurs are depicted, recoiling from the handprints, their long necks arched away as if terrified of the red markings. Some of the drawings even show them stumbling backward or toppling trees as they flee. You run your fingers lightly over the stone, feeling the roughness beneath the pigment. Historians still debate whether such images were meant to document real events, serve as warnings, or were just the work of ancient pranksters with too much free time and access to red ochre. But seeing it here in the half-light of the cave, you can't help but feel like you've stumbled onto a prehistoric comic strip. Here's an odd little fact to brighten your morning. Red ochre has been found at burial sites dating back at least 75,000 years. Early humans seem to have a thing for the color red, maybe because it reminded them of blood, maybe because it looked cool in firelight, maybe because they also had long-necked neighbors who hated it. You study the drawings a little longer, piecing together a silent ancient story. The long necks depicted here don't look aggressive, they look fearful, panicked, trying to escape. One panel shows a group of smaller creatures, early humans holding up red-dipped hands as if warding the giants off. The air in the cave grows warmer as the sun climbs higher. Dust motes dance in the light, and outside the forest hums to life. You step back into the world, blinking against the brightness, and spot fresh tracks heading away from the cave deep, familiar prints that could only belong to your red-hating friend. You follow the trail, thoughts churning. Could early humans have learned to manipulate the dinosaurs' fear of red, used it to protect their territory or steer the giant creatures away from their settlements? It sounds like something out of a campfire tale, but as you walk through the ancient forest, it doesn't seem so far-fetched. The forest shifts around you, tall ferns, towering cycads, and ancient conifers casting dappled shadows across the forest floor. Birds with teeth chatter in the canopy, and somewhere nearby the buzz of insects grows louder. The dinosaur's trail leads toward a river you can hear long before you see it, the rush of water, loud and constant. You reach the river bank and pause. Across the water, the long-necked dinosaur stands still, as if contemplating its reflection. The red smear of berries stains its lips, and for a moment it looks almost contemplative. Maybe it's just catching its breath after another night of running from imaginary scarlet demons. Or maybe, like you, it's trying to make sense of the ancient warning written on stone. The river glints in the sun, and a breeze stirs the red-streaked water where crushed berries float downstream. The dinosaur snorts and backs away from the red-tinged ripples, shaking its head as if to clear a bad dream. You crouch low, watching as it turns and disappears once more into the trees, leaving you alone on the riverbank with the sound of rushing water and the distant rustle of prehistoric life. And just for fun, did you know? Red was the first color humans gave a name to after black and white. Seems fitting that it was also the first to inspire such dramatic reactions from ancient cave artists to panicked longnecks. The morning air thickens as you trek deeper into the forest, following the chaos left in the wake of your long-necked acquaintance. Crushed plants, broken saplings, gouges in the earth. The usual calling cards of a creature that could probably flatten a bus without noticing. You move carefully, ears attuned to the sounds of the wild. And then you hear it, the unmistakable shriek of something overhead. You glance up just in time to spot a large predatory bird gliding through the canopy, its wings beating slow and steady. But this is no ordinary prehistoric menace. This one wears a crown of red feathers bright as fresh blood, stark against its dark plumage. The bird circles its beady eyes locked on something ahead. You quicken your pace, weaving through trees until you find the long-necked dinosaur standing in a small clearing. It's tense, every muscle in its colossal frame, quivering eyes fixed on the sky. The red-feathered bird screeches again, diving low as if daring the giant below to react. And oh, does it react! The dinosaur rears up its neck, arched high tail lashing side to side like a living whip. The ground shudders beneath you, and you drop into a crouch to stay balanced. The bird swoops closer, showing off those scarlet plumes, as if it knows exactly how to push the dinosaur's buttons. Historians still debate whether some ancient predators evolved red markings specifically to intimidate larger herbivores. Maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was part of a complex visual code we'll never fully understand. But watching this scene unfold, you can't help but wonder if this bird inherited the trick from a long line of red flashing troublemakers. You watch as the dinosaur swings its tail in wide arcs, knocking down young trees like they're matchsticks. The red-plumed bird cackles, or at least that's what it sounds like as it dodges the strikes with ease. You're half tempted to shout, "Pick on someone your own size," but something tells you the bird wouldn't listen. Here's a quirky fact while we're at it. The closest modern relative of some of these ancient birds is the hoatzin, a funky little Amazonian bird that smells like cow manure because of its leafy diet. Not nearly as terrifying, but hey, evolution's a wild ride. The dinosaur's panic grows. It crashes through the underbrush trying to shake the bird's pursuit. Leaves rain down, and the forest erupts in noise. Other animals fleeing, insects buzzing in agitation, branches snapping underfoot. You follow as best you can, dodging debris and keeping a safe distance. Finally, after what feels like forever, the red-feathered predator seems to lose interest. It gives one last screech, banking sharply, and disappears beyond the treetops. The dinosaur slows breath, rasping sides heaving like bellows. It stands in the wreckage of its own making, trembling, looking up at the now empty sky as if unable to believe the nightmare is over. You take a moment to catch your breath too, leaning against a tree that somehow survived the rampage. The air smells of crushed greenery and damp earth, and you can hear the forest slowly regaining its rhythm. Chirps, clicks, and the rustle of small creatures returning to their routines. And as you stand there watching the long-necked giant start to move again, you think to yourself, if dinosaurs had therapists, this one would need a long session about its relationship with the color red. You trail the long-necked dinosaur as it trudges on its massive feet, sinking into soft ground, leaving behind prints that could double as small ponds. The sun climbs higher, casting speckled light through the canopy, and the air grows thick and heavy, humming with the promise of heat. By midday, the trees thin out, and you both emerge onto a vast rocky expanse. It's a canyon wide, silent, and carved deep into the land over ages uncounted. The walls glow a dull crimson where iron-rich stone catches the sunlight. You pause, the dinosaur pauses, and together you stand on the edge of this scar in the earth. The creature shifts uneasily, nostrils, flaring eyes, darting between the canyon walls as if expecting them to leap up and attack. And here's where it gets interesting. As you watch, the dinosaur paces along the rim, its giant feet kicking up clouds of red dust that cling to its legs. But no matter how tired it looks, no matter how empty its belly might be after its earlier adventures, it refuses to settle. It paces and paces, snorting, groaning, and glancing at those crimson cliffs like they're giant predators, just waiting for a chance to pounce. Historians still debate whether prehistoric animals avoided certain geological features out of instinct, or whether early encounters, bad falls, hidden predators, taught them hard lessons that became hardwired over time. But watching this, it's hard not to see some kind of deep-seated dread at work. You find a spot under a scraggly tree and sit, wiping sweat from your brow, grateful for the sliver of shade. The dinosaur continues its anxious patrol, occasionally letting out a low, mournful sound that echoes off the canyon walls. It sounds oddly like a sigh, if sighs could shake the ground and scatter loose stones. Here's a weird tidbit to file away while you're watching your companion lose its mind. In some ancient human cultures, red stones were believed to hold protective powers. People would carry bits of red jasper or hematite as charms against evil. Funny, isn't it? What our ancestors saw as a safeguard, this dinosaur seems to see as a threat. As the afternoon drags on, the heat intensifies. The red canyon walls shimmer in the haze, and the dinosaur's restlessness grows. It tries to move farther from the cliffs, only to be blocked by thick tangles of prehistoric shrubs. Every time it turns back toward the canyon's edge, it hesitates, snorts in frustration, and stamps the ground hard enough to make pebbles jump. You can't help but sympathize. Everyone's got something that rattles them. Spiders, clowns, public speaking. This dinosaur's got red rocks. Who are you to judge? Finally, as the sun starts its slow descent casting long shadows across the canyon floor, the dinosaur seems to decide it's had enough. With a final angry bellow, it turns and heads away, moving at a steady, determined pace, as if trying to outwalk its fear. You give it a respectful distance following as the crimson cliffs fade behind you, replaced by the familiar green of the forest. As night approaches, the air cools and the world quiets. The canyon with all its silent red menace lies behind. But something tells you this won't be the last time red causes trouble. The forest welcomes you back like an old friend, its shadows long and cool after the glare of the Red Rock Canyon. The long-necked dinosaur moves slower now, its sides heaving its massive head low as if weighed down by exhaustion or maybe embarrassment. You stay just far enough behind to avoid becoming collateral damage in case another patch of red sets it off. After a while, the trees thin again, revealing a field that stretches to the horizon, an ancient plain dotted with strange boulders. But these aren't ordinary graced moans. They shimmer with a rusty hue, their surfaces streaked with iron deposits that glow dull red in the fading light. The dinosaur freezes at the sight, and you can almost feel the tension ripple through its massive body like a wave. It takes one cautious step forward, then another, nostrils quivering as it sniffs at the unfamiliar terrain. But the moment its foot lands beside one of the red stones, it recoils, letting out a low groan that sounds like a door creaking open in some haunted mansion. Historians still debate whether creatures of the prehistoric world could sense the mineral makeup of their surroundings, whether these red rocks emitted some subtle signal that made animals uneasy, or if it was pure coincidence. Watching the long neck hesitate and snort at these harmless stones, you'd swear it's convinced they're up to no good. You crouch behind a fallen log and study the scene. The dinosaur circles the field, refusing to cross it, tail swishing in agitation. Its giant feet churn up the edges of the plain, creating muddy gullies where water collects, reflecting the red-tinted stones like shards of ancient glass. And here's an odd little fact to chew on while you're hiding out: ancient humans prized iron-rich stones, not just for tools but as pigments. They'd grind them down into powder and smear them on everything from cave walls to their own skin. Imagine what this dinosaur would think of a painted human. Probably wouldn't stick around to find out. The air grows still as the dinosaur lingers at the edge of the field, torn between hunger and fear. You can hear its stomach rumble, loud enough to startle a flock of small bird-like dinosaurs that had been picking at insects in the grass. But even hunger isn't enough to get it to cross the red stone plain. The sun dips lower, casting the stones in a fiery glow that only deepens the dinosaur's unease. It lets out a sharp snort, stamps its feet in frustration, and finally turns retreating back into the safety of the forest. The earth shivers under its steps, and you rise from your hiding place, brushing dirt from your hands. You glance back at the field of red stones, their strange gleam fading as night falls. You wonder what ancient forces shaped this patch of land and why, after all these millennia, it still has the power to unsettle one of the largest creatures ever to walk the earth. And just before you move on, here's a quirky aside: there's a mineral called hematite. One of those red, iron-rich stones that ancient people believed could stop bleeding. Maybe the dinosaur was just trying to avoid a bad omen. The forest darkens, and you follow the sound of the long neck's retreat, the night wrapping around you both like a thick, quiet blanket. The forest seems to breathe with you as you walk, the cool night air wrapping around your skin, carrying the scent of pine and damp soil. The long-necked dinosaur moves ahead, calmer now, though the occasional nervous flick of its tail tells you the redstone field still haunts it. But as dawn approaches, the world shifts again, and not for the better. A low rumble wakes the earth beneath your feet. You stop, heart thudding. The dinosaur stops too, head lifting, nostrils wide as it tests the air. Another rumble follows, louder this time, a deep rolling growl from the bones of the world itself, and then you see it. Far on the horizon, where the land rises in jagged peaks, a fiery glow blooms against the dark sky. A volcano awake and angry, its molten heart spilling out in streams that catch the light like rivers of blood. The red glow pulses across the land, painting the forest in eerie hues of crimson. The dinosaur lets out a groan, a sound that vibrates in your chest and bolts. Its feet slam the ground so hard you nearly topple over. Trees snap, bushes flatten, and the creature barrels through the undergrowth in blind terror. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs could detect seismic shifts better than modern animals, whether they had some extra sense that warned them of danger before it arrived. Watching this giant flee before the volcano's fire reaches even the nearest hill, you're tempted to believe it. You scramble to keep up, heart racing, leaping over fallen logs and ducking under branches as the forest shakes with distant quakes. The fiery light grows brighter red and orange, mingling like some monstrous dawn come too soon. And here's a weird fact to tuck into your pocket for later. Some ancient human myths speak of red mountains as places where gods forged weapons or where the earth birthed monsters. Seeing this, you can understand why. The sight of that molten river is enough to make you want to run for the next continent. The dinosaur crashes through a grove of cycads, trampling their broad leaves to tatters. It doesn't slow, doesn't look back, driven by primal fear of the red glow creeping ever closer. You dodge after it, lungs burning, feet slipping on loose soil as the first ash begins to fall, soft and fine as snow. The air turns hot and thick, carrying the bitter tang of smoke. The forest around you seems to waver in the heat, the distant roar of the volcano filling your ears. The dinosaur veers toward a stream, splashing through it with such force the water sprays up in great sheets, hissing as it hits hot stones. You follow, drenched and gasping, as the beast leads you deeper into the forest, away from the fiery light. Branches claw at your arms, and the ground trembles beneath every step, but you keep going because stopping isn't an option. And as the volcano's glow fades behind you, hidden by miles of trees and hills, you both slow. The dinosaur stands, sides heaving, steam rising from its wet skin. It snorts, shakes itself like a dog, and looks around, as if unsure how it got here. You lean against a tree, trying to catch your breath, the ash falling soft around you like gray rain. For now, at least you've outrun the red terror. But you have a feeling this won't be the last time red haunts your path. The forest, battered but still standing, hums quietly in the aftermath of your frantic escape. The air smells of wet earth and charred wood, a reminder that the volcano's fury wasn't as distant as you'd like to believe. The long-necked dinosaur stands motionless nearby, eyes scanning the trees, ears attuned to every rustle. You can feel its tension like static in the air, because once again red is about to stir up trouble. You hear the rival before you see it. Heavy steps, the crack of snapping branches, a low grunt that vibrates through the ground. The long neck stiffens, tail twitching, head lowering defensively. Then the rival emerges from the undergrowth, a massive herbivore, broad-chested, horned, and streaked head to toe in thick red mud from a nearby wallow. The sight of it seems to short-circuit the long neck's brain. It lets out a shocked, almost offended bellow, and charges not a graceful or well-thought-out move, but a panic-fueled lunge. The rival snorts, stomps its feet, and meets the charge with a clash that sends echoes through the valley. Historians still debate whether color perception in dinosaurs was as finely tuned as in modern birds, or if behaviors like this were rare quirks rather than common reactions. Watching these two giants collide, though you're convinced this is no coincidence. The sight of that red mud turned your usually peaceful companion into a creature of chaos. You scramble to higher ground, clambering up a slope to avoid getting flattened by the titanic duel below. The long neck swings its tail like a wrecking ball, smacking trees and sending flocks of bird-like dinosaurs shrieking into the sky. The rival lowers its head and pushes back, shoving the long neck sideways, hooves tearing up great clods of earth. Here's a strange fact to consider. As you cling to a branch, Red ochre wasn't just used for art or ritual, it was sometimes smeared on warriors before battle, a kind of prehistoric war paint. Seems like this rival dinosaur had the same idea whether on purpose or by accident. The fight continues, a brutal, noisy contest of strength and fear. The long neck's panic fuels its strikes, but the rival's bulk and stubbornness make it hard to drive off. The forest suffers as much as the combatants' trees toppled. Ferns crush the earth itself, torn up in their struggle. Finally, with one last massive swing of its tail, the long neck manages to knock the rival off balance. The mud-streaked creature stumbles, rights itself, and perhaps deciding this patch of forest isn't worth the hassle, retreats into the trees, snorting its displeasure. The long neck stands panting, sides heaving, its massive frame trembling with leftover adrenaline. Its eyes still dart wildly as if expecting another red-stained enemy to emerge from the woods. You stay on your perch a little longer just in case. The forest quiets again. The only sounds the creak of settling trees and the soft thud of the long neck's weary steps as it limps away from the ruined clearing. You slide down from your hiding spot, heart still pounding, and follow at a respectful distance. The sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the battered land. The battle's over, but the color red has claimed another victory in this strange prehistoric tale. You follow the long-necked dinosaur through the wreckage of the forest. The battered plants and scarred earth marking its retreat like a trail of ancient regrets. The light fades as the sun slips behind the hills, and soon only the moon casts its pale glow over the world. You pause, catching your breath, watching the giant's silhouette sway through the trees. Your mind drifts as you walk. After everything you've seen, the flower tantrum, the berry rampage, the sunset meltdown, the red rock standoff, the volcanic dash, the mud-streaked rival. You can't help but wonder, was this hatred of red hardwired, or just some strange superstition passed through generations of long necks like campfire stories? Historians still debate whether dinosaurs could distinguish colors as vividly as birds, their closest living relatives, or whether we're projecting patterns onto them, desperate to decode a behavior we'll never truly understand. Some argue it was a survival mechanism. Red meant danger, blood, poison, fire. Others say it's more likely these tales grew in the telling. Ancient observers adding drama to the lives of creatures already larger than life. You chuckle softly at the thought. Somewhere back in time, maybe a prehistoric storyteller gestured at a red sunset and swore that's what drove the giants mad. And here you are in the thick of it, trying to separate fact from legend while dodging a tale bigger than your house. As you trail the dinosaur, the forest opens into a quiet meadow bathed in moonlight. The giant lowers its head to graze, cautious ears flicking at every sound. For once, the world seems peaceful. No red flowers, no red mud, no volcanic glow. Just silver light and the soft chorus of the night. Here's a curious, odd fact to keep your brain busy. Ancient Romans believed red coral could protect children from harm. Maybe if you had a piece, you could wave it around and see if the long neck runs for the hills. You settle at the edge of the clearing, watching the dinosaur nibble at ferns, its sides rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. For a moment, you almost feel sorry for it, the way it startles at every reddish glint in the grass, the way it chews nervously, glancing up as if expecting the moon itself to betray it. The breeze carries the scent of crushed greenery and damp soil, and the meadow hums with the soft sounds of insects and night birds. You lean back against a tree, eyes heavy, lulled by the rhythm of the creature's breath and the gentle whisper of the grass. But you know better than to believe the peace will last. In a world this old, under a sky this wide, something red is always waiting just around the corner. You wake to the smell of rain on the wind, the night air charged with energy that raises the hairs on your arms. The long-necked dinosaur is already on edge, pacing the meadow's edge, its massive form silhouetted against a sky now bruised with dark clouds. The stillness is eerie. No chirping insects, no calls of nightbirds, just the low growl of thunder rolling in from the horizon. And then, with a crack that makes you flinch and clap your hands over your ears, the sky splits open. A jagged bolt of lightning forks down red as molten iron staining the clouds in a surreal glow. The long neck lets out a bellow of pure terror, eyes wide tail whipping wildly as it bolts into the trees, crashing through the undergrowth like a living avalanche. Historians still debate whether prehistoric creatures perceived lightning as we do, whether they could distinguish color in those split-second bursts, or if that's a trick of our modern imagination. But as you scramble after the panicked giant, dodging branches and leaping over roots, it's clear enough that something about this storm has rattled it to its core. Here's a quirky tidbit to consider as you run for your life. Rare forms of volcanic lightning. Yes, that's a thing, can actually appear red thanks to ash particles superheating in the air. It's like the planet's own fireworks show if fireworks were designed to terrify every living thing within 100 miles. The storm rages above you, each red-tinged flash revealing fleeting nightmarish snapshots. The dinosaur's terrified eyes, the twisting trees, the forest floor churned to mud. The rain comes down in sheets, drumming on leaves and soaking you to the bone. The long neck slips and stumbles, its great feet sliding in the muck, but it keeps going, driven by instinct and fear. You struggle to keep up, heart-pounding legs burning. The world reduced to the thunder's roar and the blinding bursts of red light that make everything look like it's been set ablaze. The dinosaur crashes through a fallen tree, shattering it like kindling, then barrels across a clearing where the lightning's eerie glow turns every raindrop into a ruby spark. Finally, after what feels like forever, the storm begins to ease. The thunder's voice fades to a distant grumble, and the rain softens to a misty drizzle. The dinosaur slows sides, heaving steam rising from its rain-slicked skin. It stops in a grove of ancient conifers, the branches sheltering it from the last of the storm's fury. You collapse at the base of a tree, gasping for breath, soaked and shivering, watching the giant try to calm itself. Its sides rise and fall, its massive head low as if embarrassed by its own fear. The forest around you breathes again the storm's terror, leaving behind only the quiet drip of water from the leaves. And as the red lightning fades from memory, you can't help but wonder if the long neck sees every flash of that color as a new threat, a reminder of dangers too ancient to name. The night passes slowly, the air heavy with the damp breath of the storm. When dawn breaks at last, you rise stiffly, every muscle aching from the chase. The long-necked dinosaur stands nearby, still as a statue, watching the horizon as if daring the storm to return. But the sky is clear now, pale and innocent, as though the red lightning of the night were just a bad dream. You both move on, drawn toward the sound of rushing water. The ground slopes downward, and soon you stand at the edge of a swollen river, its muddy waves tinted red with clay and silt, washed down from the storm-lashed hills. The current is fierce, churning and snapping at the banks like a hungry predator. The dinosaur hesitates, its massive feet sinking into the wet earth. It eyes the red-tinged water with deep suspicion, shifting its weight nervously. The river seethes and foams, carrying branches, leaves, and debris in its swift embrace. The giant could wade across in calmer times, but now it's a gauntlet of chaos. Historians still debate whether dinosaurs had established migration routes that required regular river crossings, or if they simply followed instinct wherever food and safety led. But watching this giant balk at the red flood, you wonder how many journeys ended at the edge of water, turned strange by nature's tantrums. You glance around and spot a narrow bend where the river spreads shallow over a pebbly bar. You gesture, voice lost in the roar of water, and slowly, cautiously, the dinosaur follows your lead. Its great feet splash down the current, pushing hard against its legs. The red-stained flood swirls around it, and for a terrifying moment the giant stumbles, almost swept sideways. Your heart lurches into your throat as you scramble along the bank, shouting encouragement the dinosaur can't possibly understand. The beast regains its footing, plants its feet with stubborn strength, and presses on. Inch by inch, it forces its way across muscles, straining breath, rasping loud enough to be heard over the water's roar. And here's an odd fact for you. While you're ankle-deep in mud, some ancient cultures believed rivers with red clay banks were sacred, the color a sign of life or the earth's blood. You're starting to think this dinosaur would have found those places deeply offensive. The last few steps are the hardest. The current grabbing at the dinosaur's tail, the river trying one final time to pull it under. But with a mighty surge, the giant hauls itself onto the far bank, water streaming from its sides, tail dragging deep furrows in the mud. You cross as well. Heart-pounding legs shaking, soaked to the bone and smeared with clay. The dinosaur stands panting, head low, eyes wide, trembling from the ordeal. But you made it. Together you left the Red River behind. The land beyond rises toward gentle hills, green and peaceful under the morning sun. The dinosaur gazes at it for a long moment before taking the first careful steps toward safety. And you follow, wondering what red menace waits ahead. The hills roll gently beneath your feet, the ground soft with moss, and the sweet scent of damp earth rising in the morning warmth. For the first time in what feels like forever, the long-necked dinosaur walks without tension in its stride. Its massive form sways with each step, head swinging low to pluck tender shoots from the ground. You almost allow yourself to believe the worst is over. But then the breeze shifts. It carries with it a faint, familiar perfume, sweet, sharp, and unmistakable. You top a rise and stop dead. Below, the valley has transformed overnight. As if the storm had been a herald, spring has exploded across the land. Trees you'd barely noticed the day before are now heavy with blossoms. And not just any blossoms. Red blossoms. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The long neck freezes, head raised, nostrils flaring. Its eyes widen, and you know that look all too well by now. You barely have time to shout a warning, though. What would you say? Don't do it before the dinosaur charges? Historians still debate whether flowering plants in the dinosaur era produced the same vibrant colors we see today, or whether their hues were duller, hidden beneath millennia of pigment loss in fossils. But here and now, there's no mistaking the vivid crimson of these blooms, and no mistaking the fury they awaken. The dinosaur smashes through the grove, ripping branches down with sweeps of its neck, trampling saplings underfoot, tail flattening anything in its path. The red blossoms rain down like ancient confetti, their petals torn and scattered, their sweet scent thick enough to choke on. You scramble for cover behind a fallen log, heart racing as the ground shakes with every furious step. The air fills with the sound of splintering wood and the groans of the giant as it lays waste to the grove, driven by a fear or hatred so deep it seems almost tragic. And here's a weird little fact to chew on. As you dodge falling branches, in some cultures, red flowers were believed to grow where heroes fell in battle, their color a reminder of sacrifice. If that's true, this valley is about to produce enough legends for a dozen lifetimes. Finally, the dinosaur slows, sides heaving, surrounded by destruction. The grove lies in ruins, the ground littered with crushed petals, snapped limbs, and mangled trunks. The giant snorts, trembling, and takes a few cautious steps back as if stunned by the force of its own rage. The wind picks up, scattering what's left of the red blossoms across the valley floor. You rise slowly from your hiding place, watching as the dinosaur turns tail dragging and begins a slow retreat from the battlefield it created. The valley is silent now, the only sound the soft whisper of petals as they settle to the ground. You follow the scent of broken blooms heavy in the air, wondering how much farther you'll have to go to find a place where red no longer haunts the giant's path. You move on in uneasy silence. The ruined grove disappearing behind you as the forest folds back around the trail. The air cools, the sky darkens, and soon you realize that this is no ordinary sunset approaching. The light takes on a strange coppery tint, and the wind dies completely. Even the usual chatter of insects and birds has faded into an expectant hush. The long-necked dinosaur pauses, lifting its head, ears twitching. You follow its gaze as the sky darkens further, the sun's glow swallowed by a rising shadow. You know what's coming. An eclipse, but not just any eclipse. The kind that bathes the land in an eerie blood-red glow. At first, the change is subtle, a deepening of color, a thickening of shadows. But soon the entire world is drenched in crimson light, as if the sky itself is bleeding. The dinosaur shudders, backing into the trees, eyes wide, tail swishing dangerously. Historians still debate whether ancient creatures reacted to eclipses as modern animals do, whether the sudden change in light sent them into panic or if they stood confused as day became night. Watching this giant's distress, you'd bet on panic every time. And here's a curious fact. While the world turns red around you, in some ancient myths, eclipses were battles between the sun and monstrous beasts, their clash staining the sky. Standing here, it feels like you've wandered right into one of those stories. The dinosaur bellows a low, mournful cry that echoes through the silent forest. Other creatures answer cries of confusion, fear, warning. The land trembles as the giant paces in tight circles, unable to decide whether to flee or fight. You crouch low, heart pounding, watching as the crimson light deepens the shadows, sharpening the air heavy with tension. The eclipse reaches its peak, and for a few terrible moments it feels as though time itself has stopped. Then slowly, the light begins to shift. The red fades, replaced by pale gold as the sun fights its way free of the moon's shadow. The forest exhales. Birds call, insects hum, and the long neck stops, sides heaving, trembling with the effort of holding itself together. You rise, muscles sore from crouching so long, and step out from the brush. The dinosaur watches you, eyes wide but calmer now, as if realizing the danger has passed. It snorts softly, almost sheepishly, and turns to continue its journey, eager to leave the red-stained memory behind. And as you follow, you wonder how many times had ancient creatures lived through such events, and how many times had that strange red sky left a mark on their ancient hearts. The land ahead unfolds like a promise. Soft hills bathed in the gentle light of late afternoon forests, dappled with gold and green, and not a single splash of red as far as your eye can see. The long-necked dinosaur moves slowly now, each step deliberate, as if testing the ground, as if afraid the earth itself might betray it with another crimson surprise. You follow at a respectful distance, the weight of your journey settling on your shoulders like the evening mist. The wind hums low through the trees, carrying the sweet, clean scent of moss and water. There's peace here, real peace, the kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket and lets you believe for a little while that the world can be kind. The dinosaur pauses at a small stream that winds its way between boulders soft with lichen. It lowers its head, drinking deeply, the tension easing from its massive frame. You watch as its sides stop trembling, as its breath slows to a steady rhythm. No red flowers, no red mud, no volcanic glow, no blood-lit sky, just water, stone, and the soft music of the forest. Historians still debate whether creatures like this ever found lasting refuges, places untouched by the forces that shaped their fears. But as you stand here watching this giant finally rest, you'd like to think they did. You'd like to think that even in a world as wild and dangerous as theirs, there were quiet corners where peace could bloom. And here's one last odd little fact to carry with you as the light fades. Red is the first color babies see clearly after birth. There's something ancient in our connection to that color, something that reaches all the way back to days like this when it meant danger or survival, or both. The dinosaur lifts its head, water dripping from its mouth, and gazes out across the valley beyond. The Red Valley, the one that haunted its steps, is far behind now. Before it lies a land soft with green and gold where no scarlet shadows lurk. It takes a deep breath, and for the first time its posture relaxes fully, its massive tail dragging lazily behind it as it moves forward. You follow your own breath matching its slow, steady rhythm. The last rays of sunlight stretch long across the hills, and the first stars begin to wink into existence overhead. The journey is over, or at least this part of it is. And as night folds itself around you, both you feel the weight of the story settle, the story of fear and fury, of flight and survival, and of a world where color could change the course of a life. You walk on until the forest swallows you in its cool embrace, the sounds of the stream fading behind. The long neck leads the way, its steps sure now steady at peace. Now, let's slow our pace. Let's soften the world around us. The red terrors of the journey fade into distant memory, blurred by time and distance. The giant silhouette melts into the night, its shape becoming part of the landscape, part of the story, part of the shadow of the ages. You breathe deep, and the air is cool, clean, untouched by fear. The stars above scatter their gentle light across the sleeping land, and the forest hums with the soft sigh of wind through ancient trees. And as you stand there at the edge of this quiet world, I'll leave you with a whisper. The dangers have passed, the journey has ended. And in this place of green and gold, peace lingers just a little longer.